Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Bold Lawyer Show. It is Tuesday, December 5th, and I'm your host, JD Hoovener. I've got my co-host with me, Matt Colson.
What's going on?
Hey, Matt. Oh, man, it's just so good to see you. We both got the memo, kind of the gray shirts today.
Yep.
For those on the audio, on the podcast. Just imagine two attorneys. I'm wearing a really kind of a humble T-shirt. You're wearing a nice V
I got
sweater.
the V-neck.
Yeah, you've stepped it up.
I mean, just screams class, you know.
It really is. Just a little bit of chest hair, but
Just a little bit. Just
yeah,
a little bit.
it's poking up. Man, I'm excited. So today we're getting it back going. 2 weeks off, ready to jump back in this week. This is the Bold Lawyer Show. So we're interviewing attorneys here, and I've got one waiting backstage patiently. Has volunteered to share with you, the live audience, which is just growing, multiplying as we speak. We're live across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We welcome any question. Anything is fair game. Just know that we're and for the answer, just to kind of keep you, satisfied, we're willing to do a money back guarantee for your full payment. We're going to just send it back if you're not happy with the answer.
Yeah, whatever you paid for this podcast, we'll return it to you.
That's right.
And we will pay shipping and handling.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay, you heard it. So I wasn't going to go there, but you did. So no, this is great, and we'll have our guest on here. I'm going to bring him on. There's no reason to delay. Mr. Ben Golden, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good, really good. It's after holidays. We're trying to, do a little bit of business here before we hit Christmas, New Year's.
Yeah.
Are you feeling kind of the same way? You kind of just getting back in, or have you been busy through? Where's your?
We actually just got back. My wife and 5 and 2-year-old just got back from Japan for 10 days.
Wow.
So we are exhausted, but it was a great time.
Cool.
Box to dig through, and this is a great procrastination activity.
That sounds great, man. How was traveling to Japan with a 5 and 2-year-old?
No problem.
Okay.
Trains everywhere, a lot of noodles, Hello Kitty and Pokemon imagery everywhere.
But I mean, like the flight out there and back, and actually you're on the West Coast, so that's not it's still bad.
Yeah, with Benadryl and melatonin, anything is possible.
Yeah, for you or the kids.
Yeah, right.
No comment. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's awesome. We've been talking about going to Japan. I want to go.
Yep.
You guys went opposite sides of the world. So Matt, you went to Ireland and Scotland with your family.
Yep.
I guess I went south. I went to Cabo and then got sick in Mexico. So that's funny. Well, cool. We're traveling and we're getting back to it. So okay, let's get to it. Our listeners either now or on the recorded session want to hear the topic of you, Mr. Ben Golden, and your founder story. And so I'm going to put you on the big screen. But first,
you're going to lose their video streamers that way, but go for it.
No, not at all. So let us in on your founder story, Ben Golden Consulting, and how it got started. How long ago was it? What made you want to do your own thing?
Yeah, it started 3 years ago. It was a complete accident and entirely unintentional. So I followed a girl, now wife, then girlfriend, to law school with no intention of being a lawyer.
Wow.
That's an expensive proposition. You know what? I'm going to follow this gal to law school. No big deal.
Yeah. It's, keep options open. I thought it'd be interesting. So we knew we wanted to be in Seattle. So we went to University of Washington Law School. And hey, I kind of liked it. It was enjoyable.
Okay.
The Great Recession hit, 2 weeks into 1L year, and you realize, oh God, I just signed up for a bunch of loans. Maybe I should get like a real lawyer job out of this thing and pay off a few loans. And I also was enjoying, some experience and exposure I had to entrepreneurial community. I did some international development work, helping launch a social enterprise in West Africa before law school. Cool. And I like that notion of sort of building something from nothing from that experience. And so I gravitated towards startup law, and I ended up at Perkins Coie out of law school. And I gave him about 2.5 years. And I was a very precocious, probably in retrospect, a terrible associate. So if I'm going to do this thing, I want to be like those rainmakers who are always going off and, meeting interesting people and not doing some of the grunt work. Just what an idiot, totally unhelpful for the, as a second year associate. but I was trying to bring in business, and I was meeting a lot of startups. And one of the startups said, "Hey, we actually are growing quickly, and we like you. You should come aboard." So in 2014, I went in-house to a company. At the time was called Has Offers, and it rebranded to Tune. And it was an awesome experience. I learned a ton. When you're at a big firm, you get really good at one, maybe two things if you're lucky. Because why is somebody going to pay you a ton of money? It's because you're going to do the same thing over and over again and nothing else, and you become a specialist really quickly.
That's right, man.
I get that model, but that wasn't appealing to me. I liked the in-house experience of being mediocre at a lot of things, and then eventually being good at a lot of things, using different parts of your brain. And it's a lot more problem solving.
Okay.
And, people come to you with questions and they don't know if it's a legal problem necessarily. It hasn't been vetted fully. They just have a problem and you work through it. And oftentimes you can solve it. And oftentimes you are just resourceful and you figure out how to get there. So it's 6 years in-house. Great experience. The company grew, the company shrank,
What kind of company, real quickly, did you say?
I did not say. Good question. It was digital marketing analytics.
Oh.
It was not like the reason I went there. It was great people. It was a fun community, great opportunity for my professional development. And I did learn a lot in the space. And, certainly data privacy and data security took off in that interim. GDPR went live.
Right.
We had, a couple offices in Europe and around the world. And so great experience. I liked that in-house experience. The company divested, and eventually the remaining entity sold in May 2020. That's 9 weeks into a global pandemic. I had a small child and another child on the way. I said, this thing's going to pass in a little bit, and then I'll figure out what's next. So I'm going to take a month and just be a great present family member and bide my time. And of course, shitty entomologist, or not entomologist, what's the folks who study germs?
Immunology.
Immunology. Anyways, you can edit this. It's not live, right?
Don't drop any F-bombs. I mean, no, you're doing great.
Cool. The point is, I had a longer downtime than I expected, and I was watching a toddler with no ability to go into a home or go into a indoor anything. And so I started to take on a few one-off projects for friends during nap times and after they went to sleep. And my wife was like, you ought to get some malpractice insurance. You ought to get paid other than like drinks with your friends and Venmo. Like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll make an LLC. I know how to do all that stuff. And as daycare worlds emerged and our second child started going to daycare, my availability gradually increased too. And I found I loved the flexibility of a solo practice. I loved being able to choose who I worked with, what issues I worked on. It was the things that I loved about the in-house experience without some of the top-down pressures of the big law model. And so I truly backed into a law firm, and now 3.5 years into it, and it's full bore, full time, and it's going great. I love my clients. I enjoy most of the work that I do for them. And I can say, no, I don't want to work with you. Right? At a project and the world goes on and I can find something else to fill my time. And when my kids get sick, because they're still 5 and 2, I can, make space to do that as well. And so I've lucked into a great solo practice. Happy to talk about what that means.
Yeah. Super cool, Ben. JD, do you get the sense that this guy backed into a legal career here?
No, that was incredible. That was really well done, Ben. That was 9 minutes of solid, good stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome. There's a lot of nuggets in there.
I wrote down some things. Okay. So Perkins Coie. And then finding a startup. I know that was a long time ago, almost 10 years ago now. For some of those maybe listening that are at firms like Perkins, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have a client like this. Maybe they've asked me when I was out for drinks. And how did you make that jump? What were some of the things that helped you pull the trigger, if you will? Maybe you didn't have as much family, obviously no family yet, things on the line. But walk us through that if you can remember. Was it challenging, or was it easy decision?
Yeah, the firm to in-house jump.
Yeah.
It was it was pretty exciting in the moment. I'd say the most exciting day of my Perkins experience was going around the floor and telling everybody one by one, because that's when people really tell you what they think of you and what they think of your career op. So it was like the most candid talk I had in my 2.5 years there.
Okay.
One of the partners that I really respected, and I still, keep in touch with, have a great deal of respect, was like, "You're making a huge mistake. It's going to be hard to come back and, keep the momentum going and the learning you've done and the relationships you've built." And that was true. I just had to be honest with myself of, did I want that, some of the sacrifices you need to make to do that? Did you want that career? And I didn't. So a lot of it's being honest with what you actually want in your career and practice. And you know what? Your life is short. You can change things. You can go back. If I truly missed it and I wanted to scrap and find a way back into big law, I'm sure that path is there for folks. So if you've got the curiosity and the opportunity, don't think twice.
Well, Ben, you got someone out there that your story mirrors someone else. So Philip Swain, we're actually having Philip on next week. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. He went big firm, small firm, in-house, then solo. So he had a little small firm in there.
So Ben, when you went in-house to work for this startup or this larger startup, was there another attorney there that you were working with?
Yeah, a great attorney and a friend that I knew from law school who was transitioning into a business role over time. And so made my transition a lot easier too. I didn't have to build a legal team from the ground up.
Right. That's awesome.
But the company was scaling too. And so a lot of it was a great opportunity to be able to bounce ideas off somebody, work with somebody. But then over time, know that I had sort of leadership opportunities too.
And I got to ask, what kind of law does your wife practice?
She is a land use attorney, doing almost all downtown Seattle. Density zealot. It's awesome. You can be at a private firm and have a positive environmental and housing equality impact on the world. She is truly the happiest attorney I know in her practice.
Cool.
It's a mix of transactional and litigation. It's get the deal done. And if it's not coming together, then you've got some combative tools to play with. So for law students out there, you should probably do land use laws, is what I've learned.
I just remember property law and just being over the moon about adverse possession and being like, okay, I'm going to freaking squat on this.
It's not a real thing.
I'm going to be there for.
It's not a real. Are you paying the property taxes on that land you're squatting on? I don't think so. Get out of here.
I don't remember that part of that. I'm going to skip right over that. Okay, so let's talk about money, because money is interesting. Money matters. So when you left Perkins and you hopped over to in-house, level, pay upgrade, pay downgrade.
Slight downgrade with equity upside.
Awesome. That's pretty comfy.
That's
okay.
Fun. So
Nice.
It was 100 folks at the company. It was not the third person there. It was not a wild risk that a lot of true startups are. And so I hedged my bets a little bit, to be honest. Yeah.
So you were in the top, the first 100 people, and then over the course of 6 years, how did it grow? Did it grow? What was the experience there?
Yeah, it grew. There was 2 big financing rounds and some venture debts. Grew to over 400 people. We had 10 offices at one point. We made a lot of bets. I was doing some corporate work at Perkins, and we ended up acquiring 5 or 6 companies, or creative licensing deals. And so, in retrospect, the company tried a lot of things. A couple of them were home runs, and a couple of them were not. And so, up to 400 plus people at one point, but there were less by the time the company sold as well. That was the hardest time, absolutely, the last year or two.
Right.
When the investors are looking at the finances a lot more critically. As a lawyer and an executive, I grew a lot more, but it was less fun. So it depends what you want in your career. I'm glad I learned and experienced both in retrospect. How to actually run a company like a grown up. But I had a lot more fun the first few years.
Got it. And did it sort of, did the business wind up because of COVID, or was it planning to wind and divest, as you were saying, and the timing just happened to go?
There were 2 very distinct business lines.
Mhm.
and they're both very successful in their own spaces, but they had different growth trajectories. And so what made sense for one didn't necessarily make sense for the other. So one sold in 2018, and the rest of the business line sold in 2020. It was like needing some refreshment of leadership, new capital, and it was one way to get some new capital and resources was to join a larger entity. So it was a bittersweet transaction. Yeah.
And sorry for going asking questions. This is too much, but I'm curious because when you had that acquisition, did you have a chance to stay with that bigger entity?
I mentally didn't even entertain the notion.
Okay.
If it was there, I made it pretty clear that I was ready to hang out with my kiddo, not ready to start a new law firm. I would have laughed if somebody suggested that.
Yeah.
6 months later, had launched my own thing. But yeah, I was personal burnout, professional burnout. I was ready to hang out at the playground.
Got it. Well, I mean, so this is so you built the firm very slowly. So, I mean, you're able to pick your clients. Sounds like, I mean, that's kind of like a dream, honestly. And if I think back, I was much more frantic and like financially concerned. I was taking on a lot of cases for way less than probably they're worth, just to kind of make sure I could pay some bills. Doesn't sound like you had as much of concern there. Is that right?
I was lucky in that regard. Absolutely. I had existing relationships. When you're at one point the only or one of the few attorneys at a company with hundreds of engineers locally, they all go off and start their own thing or join something new, and it's the person you know. I went to UW for undergrad and law school, and I'm here in Seattle. I've got a healthy network from the Perkins days in the entrepreneurial community, and I was very involved policy work, and I've always perpetually served on at least a few nonprofit boards at a time. So using that network that I'd sort of built unintentionally, just because I wanted to be involved and engaged in issues in the community.
Yeah.
When I sort of put it out there, hey, I'm now, doing a solo practice and I can do these 4 or 5 different things to help you out. Folks, reached out, or I had a few existing relationships that I knew were often starting their own thing that I could work with. And so it did build organically from there. And when I've needed work, I've been able to just, I know who I might want to work with, who's working on some interesting startups. And those are the folks I might want to hit up for coffee or lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. Must have been really hard, Ben, for you being, such an extreme introvert, finding new clients.
I like people. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's obvious, people like you, I'm sure too.
And what's been interesting and maybe a biggest learning over these 3 years has been, what do I want to do? I don't want to just represent a company to like talk about, hey, I got this client. I did it. I've got him. What's the actual work I want to do? Because that's, what I'm here to do. That's why I'm happy to be part of their team. And I've learned, just because I want to work with a company, what they need may not be something I can provide. And that's been the biggest learning of when to say no, even though we get along great. I'm not the right person for you.
Did I phrase that right? Ben's tip number 1. What is the actual kind of work you want to do? I didn't phrase that right.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, that's right. I like using a lot of parts of my brain. I would rather be a generalist and get paid less than do one thing over and over and over again. And a lot of companies need 6 specialists in 6 areas, and they want the best, and they'll pay whatever. And that's great. And that works for a lot of companies. And I'm probably not going to be the best person for them unless they want someone to triage and say, there's a lot of things you could be worrying about. Help us issue spot, help us prioritize, and help us find that right person in the space. So I serve that role, basically a fractional general counsel to a handful of companies. And I love that. And I'm not
I'm going to jump in really quick here. So for those listening at home, you can't see Ben, great looking guy, but he also has on his little name tag on the screen, Ben Golden Consulting, which is interesting because I've never heard a law firm call themselves more of a consulting agency or, focus on consulting, but that seems to be kind of what you really do. You're a legal consultant.
I aspire to do that. I'm realizing folks are willing to pay me to do legal work a lot more than other things, but I've served as an advisor, in exchange for equity to some startups where it wasn't just legal. And I really enjoyed that experience. And I was like, I want to do a lot more of that. But when, we talk about our hourly rate or a retainer and flat fees, I'm talking to you because you're a lawyer. You're my law firm. Let's be real. So it's more of a failed self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm waiting for it to fulfill. Probably rebranch, probably talk to a trademark attorney.
Hey.
What I like doing, if I could choose the kind of work, is the fractional general counsel work, where I'm joining the board meetings, the leadership team meetings. I understand what the organization, mostly for-profit businesses, but I have a few nonprofit organization clients as well. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish now in the medium term? And how do we work towards that? What are the obstacles to you doing that? And we'll back into some projects that may or may not be legal to figure out how to do it. And either I can do that work or I can find the right person for you to do that. And that's been a fun practice for me. I have a fair amount of commercial contract overflow. It pays well. It's a good way to get into businesses, relationships with them early, but in an ideal world, I do less of that and more of the just true, fractional general counsel work, because it's what I enjoy most. It doesn't pay as well, but whatever, world's too short. We'll be fine.
Got it.
Don't my commercial overflow clients hear that, but yeah, that's the practice right now.
I'm gonna turn the tables a little bit. What are your goals? If I'm able to ask, in terms of your firm, do you want to keep it small, keep it all, or try to grow it and beyond yourself?
Yeah, well, as you can hear, I've been very intentional about my career growth.
Squirrel.
Truly, I don't know. I think I want to do what I'm doing right now. I've got a good balance. I don't want to be responsible for anyone else that I don't have to be.
Okay.
So I like what I've got going. What I do need to be more successful is relationships with peer small practices, where when somebody does need that, additional area expertise that I don't have, I can go to them, and I'm not sending my clients to somebody at a Fenwick or Wilson price range. Okay. Because there's a lot of great attorneys that are not charging 4 figures an hour. I'd like to go on vacation. I like to, slow down practice. Maybe I do get busier than I want to be sometimes and need some true peers. I understand the appeal of law firms now, where, a lot of us are paying practical law too much money every year. Oh, hey, if we all went in on the same account, we would just pay less money. These basic things why people have created partnerships over hundreds of years, and, in organization, why this law world exists, this corporate world exists, I get now. But I still don't want to be responsible. I don't want somebody looking at my hours. I don't want somebody carrying what I'm doing during the day. So I'm trying to find that right balance. Maybe it evolves into a shared practice. Maybe I'm able to maintain it solo. But I don't want to go in-house. I don't want to join a big firm. I like what I'm doing right now, especially when I've got little kids in daycare who, come home with a cold every 3 weeks.
So if you look at kind of you said you're at a 40-hour week, you're basically, call it at capacity, maybe nearing that. And if so, if you were to kind of take a cross section of your clients, how would you describe that client? Age, type of company, type of work.
Yeah, I think for the fractional counsel work, smaller, they're nonprofit or before Series A typically. They probably don't have an in-house. They don't have an in-house lawyer. I effectively serve that function.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a retainer, and I'm just there X number of hours, and we plan some meetings on a regular basis, but often it's ad hoc. And we issue spot together. We figure out what needs to be done. There's certain things that I manage. The clients. I say I want to support clients with a social impact to their business.
Social impact. Okay, that's cool.
What does that mean? I get to decide when it's a solo practice, and it's often, if you succeeded, is the world better off? Great. There's a lot of enterprise software companies that it'd be cool if you succeeded and I like you, so sure, let's work together.
Right.
But I'm working towards that small, scrappy social enterprise that's willing to try a slightly different model than typical relationships with attorneys. And that's most of the practice that I've built. Some larger, Series C or D, or even a couple of public companies for some of the commercial overflow work. and a couple of nonprofits I mentioned, I think.
So does that mean a little bit of pruning then? Maybe some clients you're identifying, I don't have that much alignment with, and maybe I need to make room for them. Is that part of the
It's a
challenge?
little bit, I'm a people pleaser, so I haven't done a lot of that yet, but maybe there'll be some forcing functions. I get too busy, or some folks I really want to work with. And that's where, finding these other relationships where I want to make sure my clients have great landing places and I can work something out. That's probably on the horizon. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, last couple minutes here. Let's talk about the future. We had maybe asked that before, but hopefully, if I didn't, what do you hope to be 5 years, 10 years from now? If you were to put a plan in place and not necessarily let others dictate your future, what would you like to have happen?
As long as I am providing value and enjoying the work that I do to organizations that if they succeed, the world's better off, and I have the flexibility to be a great family member, then I'm content. And whether that is as a solo practice or in some other capacity, that's the goal. And I've learned it's less about the title. The biggest thing I think of going towards the solo practice from a company with reports or a big firm is losing the ego stroke. And that took a minute, and then you get over it really quickly. So will I miss that down the road? If I'm honest with myself, maybe, but otherwise just keep doing what I'm doing where I can help, organizations or causes that I'm excited about and have the flexibility that I want.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable and sharing your story, Ben. If any of our listeners live or those after the fact want to get a hold of you, can I share your email address with them?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So and you're at ben@bengoldenconsulting.com.
Yes. Again, well marketed, very creative.
Awesome. Matt, anything to comment and wrap up here?
No, Ben, this has been really, really cool. It's really nice to meet you and hear about your story, and a lot of overlap in our stories. And so I hope we get a chance in JD's mastermind to connect and talk more.
That'd be great. Yeah. I'll try and be less truant going forward, JD.
Yeah, me too. I think I made one lately.
You guys are on my list. That's so cool. Yeah, thank you again, Ben, and thanks, Matt, for your time. Until next week, we're live Tuesday at 2:00 Pacific. If you missed us, we're there next week. For Bold and everyone here, have a good rest of your day. Go big, go bold.